When I was sworn in the U.S. Marine Corps, when I was sworn into Congress, I swore to defend the Constitution against enemies, both foreign and domestic. I took that pledge and take that pledge very seriously. Out of control spending has become our nation's enemy. And in fact, Admiral Mike Mullen, who is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, when he was in that position, said that our nation's debt has become the greatest security threat that we face as a nation. We've got to control the this spending that both parties are guilty of doing. It's destroying the future of these little guys right over here. It's morally reprehensible that we are stealing their future because of this unsustainable debt. Out of control spending, both parties are guilty. And I'll pledge to you, as your U.S. Senator, I'll continue to fight to stop that out of control spending, and it must stop. Now, what I've been doing in the House 6 years now is focusing on targeted spending cuts. Targeted spending cuts. In just the last 2 years, I've proposed and supported over $155 billion worth of targeted cuts. Just this last week, we had our first two appropriations bill. We had the military construction and VA, as well as the Homeland Security bills on the floor. When the appropriators see me coming, they cringe because they know I have my scalpel and we're going to make cuts. And just this last week, I proposed targeted cuts of $5.25 billion of wasteful spending. Now let me give you some ideas about some of the spending cuts that I do propose and that we will be working on in this Congress. Right now today, we're spending almost $70 billion of your hard-earned money on the U.S. Department of Education. The average salary of the bureaucrats, the fat cat bureaucrats that have never taught a child to read, is $102,000 a year. That's twice what teachers make on the average here in Georgia. What I propose, let's close down the Department of Education totally. Let's keep that money here in Georgia. Let's pay our teachers more. Let's get the government shackles off teachers so we can have a world-class education system right here in Georgia. And while we're shutting down things, let's shut down the EPA too. We've got to be good stewards of our environment. Naturally, we've got to take care of God's creation. But we don't need a federal EPA that's wasting billions of your dollars and it's harming our economy and it's destroying jobs right now today. And while we're shutting down things, let's shut down the IRS also. You see the scandals that have just come about the IRS, and now just recently where the federal government is getting your phone records from Verizon if you are on their network. And just 2 days ago, we found that the federal government is getting not only your emails, but the contents of your emails and pictures and videos from Google, from Facebook. It's totally wrong. Totally wrong. It's an invasion of your privacy. It's an invasion of your liberty. And it's all being authorized through the Patriot Act, which was passed before I ever got to Congress. One thing that separates me from my two House colleagues, one voted to put the Patriot Act in place in 2001 and has voted for reauthorization of the Patriot Act every time it's come up. The other one wasn't there in 2001, but he's voted to reauthorize the Patriot Act. I have not voted, and I will not vote to reauthorize the Patriot Act. We've got to get rid of it. Now, I believe in the Constitution of the United States as our founding fathers meant it. I carry a copy in my pocket. And there are 4 questions I ask about every piece of legislation. 4 questions. The first is it right? And by that I mean, does it fit the Judeo-Christian biblical principles that our nation was founded upon? Second question, is it constitutional according to the original intent of the Constitution? Not this idea that the Constitution can be anything that's created this huge government that's so intrusive and is spending so much of your hard-earned money. But is it constitutional according to what our founding fathers, the authors of the Constitution, thought that it should be? Of limited government, enumerated powers. That's what I believe in. So is it constitutional? The third, do we need it? Fourth, can we afford it? If all 4 of those questions are yes, for 6 years now, I've voted yes. And I'll pledge to you as your U.S. Senator, I'll continue to vote that way in the U.S. Senate. Now, Brant talked about some of the awards I've been given. Recently, Club for Growth has rated me the #1 member of the entire U.S. House of Representatives as a defender of economic freedom. The #1 guy in the whole House. And in fact, you have to be in their upper 90% of their scoring to be a defender of economic freedom. And I'm the only candidate running in this race that has been declared a defender of economic freedom by Club for Growth. I believe in our Second Amendment. Our Second Amendment protects all the rest of our God-given constitutionally protected rights. I am the chairman of the Second Amendment Task Force in the U.S. House. And I'll do everything to make sure that no one ever takes away the right for you to own a gun. Now, you'll hear people talk about they're conservative. They want to cut spending. Folks, we must have a leader in the U.S. Senate who has a record, who's been in the trenches, who's been fighting to take us back to what our founding fathers gave us in the Constitution, to reestablish those principles that have made this country so great. I'm asked frequently, what separates me from the other candidates? Well, I stand alone as the only original intent constitutionalist. I stand alone as the only guy who's been in the trenches trying to stop this out-of-control spending. I'm the only guy who's been willing to say no over and over again to our leadership and to anything that comes along that is not constitutional and is against those 4 questions. I stand alone as the only person who's ever put on a uniform and served in the U.S. military. In fact, right now today I'm in the Navy Reserves. I'm an active Navy reservist. When I go to drill, I go down to Quantico, the Marine Corps base, Quantico, Virginia, and work in the Navy Health Clinic. I was deployed to Afghanistan last year. I'm an Afghanistan war vet. National defense is the most constitutional function of the federal government, and it's where we should be spending money instead of on things such as the Department of Labor, the Department of Commerce, and we need to get rid of those too. So you'll look and you'll see candidates say they're conservative, they want to cut spending, they are not Washington people. Well, the thing is, there's only one candidate in this race who believes in the Constitution as our founding fathers meant it. There's only one candidate who's been in the trenches, who's been fighting this war. We must have a U.S. Senator who will join along with my good friends, Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, Mike Lee, and others. Those folks over in the Senate who have been called by our Republican senator from Arizona, they've been called wacko birds. Well, I'm ready to go join those wacko birds in the Senate fighting for liberty. The 3 words that'll tell you who I am, what drives me. 3 words: conservative, constitutionalist, Christian. I'm a father of 3, a grandfather of 2, a husband of my wife of 28 years, Nikki Brown, who's here with me today. I'm fighting for my grandchildren's future. I'm fighting for the future of these 2 little boys over here and the guy back there. You see, if we don't stop this out of control spending, if we don't go back to those foundational principles, their future is not going to be as bright as ours is today. And it's absolutely critical that we go back to those foundational principles that made this country great. Those foundational principles of limited government and enumerated powers. And I stand alone as a candidate who will continue to do so. With your help, with your vote, with your support. I need your checks. I need you to volunteer. But most importantly, with God's grace, this is a race that we will win, and we will restore liberty back to America. Thank you all so much. God bless you. Thank you. Thank you. Questions? Now, Brant wanted me to answer some questions. I'll be glad to answer a few. Nikki and I have got to go speak to the National Guard Association, Georgia National Guard Association. Since I'm in the military and I'm a reservist, they've asked me to come to talk to the annual meeting today. So I can't stay. Normally I would stay until everybody left, but unfortunately I can't today. But I'll be glad to answer questions for a little bit. Yes, Dale.
Congressman Brown, would you say in our effort to cut spending, since our current military budget is greater today than it was back when we were actually fighting 2 wars, is there room to cut in our military as well at the Pentagon?
Well, Dale, absolutely. There is room to cut. In fact, when we had our defense appropriations last time, I offered some targeted cuts to the military also. What we should not cut is the support of our military personnel. We need to be investing in things such as a missile defense system. We've had the previous president and this president have not invested in a missile defense system as we desperately need. We've never needed that. Ronald Reagan was absolutely correct when he was talking about we needed a shield over this nation for missile defense. And particularly as rogue nations such as Pakistan and North Korea develop, they've already got nuclear weapons. North Korea is developing missile technology. You have Iran already developing missile technology. So you've got a lot of rogue states plus China. One nuclear bomb exploded at high altitude over the middle part of this country, so over the middle of Kansas, would put us back in the Stone Ages, because what would happen, a high altitude explosion of a nuclear weapon, one, which totally shut down the internet. Most cars wouldn't run anymore. Your computer wouldn't run. You couldn't come to Golden Corral because their cash registers wouldn't run. Your banking system would crash because they could not bank anymore. You couldn't get groceries in the grocery store. It would literally put us back in the Stone Age with one nuclear explosion, high altitude, because what it would do is set off what's called a electromagnetic pulse, or an EMP. We've never needed missile defense, and this administration's cut it even more so than the Bush administration did. So those are the kind of things we need to invest in. But what we don't need to invest in is in unconstitutional wars such as we have in Afghanistan, and I want to shut down the Afghanistan war and bring those troops home today. Linda.
We're watching all of the fiascos and the scandals going on in Washington, and we're watching the hearings and everything that is happening. The right questions aren't being asked. It seems like we're getting a lot of rhetoric, and the politicians, the people sitting on the hearings asking questions, aren't drilling down to the point. Are we winding up with our Attorney General? We didn't get the answers we needed on Fast and Furious, and here we are again on Benghazi. Now we've got these other issues that have come to light. Are we ever going to hold this guy accountable for what he has done?
Well, the answer is that just in general, there are 5 committees in the U.S. House that are having ongoing investigations into Benghazi. There are at least 2 looking into the IRS scandal. We'll have more looking into what's going on with at least I assume we're going to have committees looking into what's going on with Verizon, and now with with Google and Facebook and those intrusions. 4th Amendment violations into your privacy and your public, into your own, I'm looking for, into your own liberty, constitutionally guaranteed liberty. So there are investigations ongoing today. There's no question that we are going to try to get those answers. But the question is, how far will we go? What's going to happen with Eric Holder? When Eric Holder came to Congress a little over a year ago and testified about Fast and Furious, right after that I did an interview on NBC, I think it was, if I remember correctly, a national interview on TV. And I called for Eric Holder's resignation. And I said that the president should fire him, and actually he should be disbarred and he should have been prosecuted then, because he lied to Congress, there's no question. And he's lied to Congress on this IRS issue. And the heat is generating more and more. So I hope that we hold Eric Holder responsible. We have to hold this whole administration responsible. But you look at what all these things are a reflection. All these things are a reflection of a government that's growing too large. It's a government that's too intrusive and too burdensome. It's a government that feels that it's no longer a government of the people, but a government over the people, and it must stop. And the only way that we're going to do it is get we the people demanding a different kind of governance. And that's exactly what I'm going to have been doing for 6 years now as your congressman. In the Senate, I'll have a lot more wherewithal to try to get we the people activated across this nation, demanding not only for Eric Holder to be gone, but also to go back to constitutionally limited government. That's exactly going to be the long-term solution. Yes, sir.
Congressman Horne, thank you for your service.
Thanks, Joe.
Got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Where do you stand on amnesty?
I'm absolutely, adamantly against amnesty. And I'll vote no on the Senate bill. Now, what's going to happen about immigration reform, what they call comprehensive immigration reform, remains to be seen. Let me just kind of give you all some inside baseball, what I think is going to happen. Monday, the Senate's going to vote, Monday evening, on the Gang of 8 bill that was produced in the Senate. I don't think the House will take up the Senate bill at all. What I think is going to happen on this issue is I think that the House will look at reform in some manner. I know John Boehner, our Speaker, keeps talking about he wants to have comprehensive immigration reform. Now, anytime you put the word comprehensive on anything in Washington, I become very fearful of it. So, and Americans should be too, particularly freedom-loving Americans should be. The thing that I believe, and what I've already talked to our leadership about, I think, number one, first and foremost, we shouldn't do anything until we secure the border, period.
That's right.
In fact, nothing else matters, Joe, until we secure the border. The second thing, we must make English the official language of the United States. And then the third thing we need to start enforcing the laws that are on the books.
That's right.
And as soon as we do that, immigration is a very complex issue. We hear about immigration, we hear the Democrats and the liberals talk about these undocumented immigrants. They're not immigrants, they're aliens. They're lawbreakers, and they need to be dealt with as such. And I'm not for amnesty, and I will not vote for amnesty to give all these lawbreakers an access to become citizens just because they've come here. Of course, the Democrats want them to become citizens so they can vote for the Democrats so they can get your money and get federal largesse. And that must not happen. So what I think is going to happen is our chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Bob Goodlatte from Virginia, is looking at doing this on a step-by-step basis. And I think the House will not take up the Senate bill. I think we'll have some bills on the floor. But I will not vote for the Senate bill. I will not vote for any kind of amnesty for these illegal aliens that are in this country. We've got to secure the border before we do anything, and that's what I'm going to continue to push for.
One more question.
One more question, then I've got to go. Yes, sir.
HB 2009 Tom Price's bill to take the Obamacare out of the IRS. Where do we stand on that?
Well, the question is taking Obamacare out of the IRS. I want to close down the IRS altogether. Want to get rid of the IRS, but certainly I support not hiring any more IRS agents. We already see how intrusive they are. And putting them in charge of your health care decisions and fining you by saying that we're going to increase your taxes to implement the Obamacare. The solution to this, though, long term, is this. And since it's the last question, you'll hear every single Republican say they want to repeal Obamacare. I do too. I have a bill. My bill, the Patient Option Act, would totally rip Obamacare out by the roots and replace it with a patient-centered, market-based, constitutional health care plan that would lower the cost of health care for everybody, provide coverage for all Americans, and it's going to save Medicare from going broke. And will put you in charge of making your health care decisions. And in fact, the new version we're working on will totally eliminate federal bureaucrats from making any health care decisions for anybody. You'll hear candidates say they support the Second Amendment, but I'm the chairman of the Second Amendment Task Force. You'll hear candidates say they support a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. I've got the strongest balanced budget amendment to the Constitution that's been introduced in the U.S. House. Mine would require 2/3 of the House and the Senate to raise your taxes, and it caps spending, which is the two big problems you have with a balanced budget amendment. Mine's the very strongest one. You'll hear candidates talk about that they want to support veterans. Well, I support veterans. I am one. I understand that. You hear people talk about they support agriculture. I used to farm. I was just down in Washington County in Tyndall, Georgia, just yesterday, talking to farmers about the issues that they face. And the biggest issues they face is EPA. We got to get rid of EPA. We've got to get rid of those regulatory burdens that's hurting all of us. So the difference between me and every other candidate, they may say they support things, but I've got legislation. We want to get our economy going and create jobs. I've got my jobs bill that would create millions of new jobs here in this country, would infuse over $2 trillion of real hard dollars, not this quantitative easing funding money that the Federal Reserve is infusing into our economy. $2 trillion that's being held offshore by multinational corporations that can't bring it back here because of the high tax rate. My jobs bill reduces corporate taxes, capital gains taxes, dividend taxes, and death taxes permanently to zero. I've got the legislation. I've got the legislation. Nobody else has. I've been in the trenches fighting to cut spending. I'm trying to balance the budget. We've got to live within our means in Washington. We've got to create jobs. We've got to create a strong economy so that these kids will have a brighter future. There's one candidate in this race, and only one, that believes in the Constitution as our founding fathers meant it. There's one candidate who's been in the trenches, who's willing to say no and stand up, sometimes being only one of two or three. And actually, I have been one period saying no to out of control spending and to unconstitutional functions of the federal government. That's what I've been doing. I've got the record. I've got the will to fight for your liberty, to fight for those kids' future, and that's exactly what I'll do as U.S. Senator. I need your vote. I need your prayers. I need your money. I need your help as volunteers to let's put liberty back in America and put the Constitution, as our founding fathers meant it, back as the governing force of America. Thank y'all so much. God bless you. One parting thought. I want to thank y'all. You see, I'm trying to send powers back to the states or to the people, as the 10th Amendment says that they should be. We've got to have good people here in the state government that will continue the fight for liberty, like these two guys right back here, Mike Crane and David Stover. And I thank y'all for sending them to Washington, because I want to send powers back to them so that they can continue to fight for you. And thank y'all for that. Oh yes, and I forgot her. This is.